So we are recording and we're transcribing, and I think we are set. I am going to pull up our slides where we paused before lunch, and it is just a thrill to be back with you this afternoon and to take all the foundations, the concepts that we talked about this morning, and then really the excitement of taking that back. How do we put this into our practice? And that's going to be the focus this afternoon. And to get us started, I'm excited that Lisa's going to be able to kick us off. And in doing that, she's going to really begin to give more examples and share about the two projects that have taken place the last few years with staff becoming media mentors through peer coaching and their own learning and interacting with our families and what their perceptions are of us in the community and how we can grow in our roles as media mentors. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, and she is going to share a little bit about the work that's happened in Maryland and Illinois to this time.
Excellent. Yes. Hello, Carrie. Welcome back, everybody. So yeah, to bring this even closer to home, we wanted to briefly share what was learned across some peer learning programs that have happened up until now, and what we learned from staff and from community members, particularly parents, grandparents, and those who are working with kids at home in both of those programs. So there were two programs over these years here that you see on the slide, and they were designed to really do this peer learning that we've been talking about from the beginning. One was in Maryland from 2017 to 2018. Dorothy and Conni were just highly instrumental in designing that and making that all happen, and I was really super pleased to be involved in that as well. And then in 2020, we received some funding from the McCormick Foundation. Oh, and the Maryland program was funded by the state. And just big thanks to Carrie on that one. And I know through IMLS, essentially. And Illinois was our next one, and it was funded through the McCormick Foundation. In that case, too, the idea was to bring staff members from public libraries and from school libraries together to learn from each other. However, that program was supposed to have launched and did launch on March 1st of 2020, which meant that by the time we'd really kind of gotten started, we were all deep into like, oh my gosh, there's this pandemic, and what are we going to do? And we're going to have to close our libraries, and we're going to have to rethink a lot of things, and we're going to have to just rejigger. And so we rejiggered that program as well, and we did the entire thing online. But again, it still involved a lot of peer sharing, reading chapters from the Becoming a Media Mentor book and sharing together, talking online about challenges that various librarians were having within their children's departments or with families, and thinking about how to reach them. And before we go to the next slide, I just want to say, I feel like after today, we can fill in the Indiana piece of this map as well, because you guys are all really, this is just incredible to be doing this cross-border, like across states, to be able to do this work is just phenomenal. So now if we move to the next slide, what I want to do is I'll quickly take you through some of the learnings from those two programs, and it might help seed in your own minds how back in your libraries you might think about starting some of your own just continued peer learning. In this case, in both of these cases, we wanted to make sure we gathered some data. And so we did by doing staff assessments, just how do staff members in the libraries feel about this work, and what are they worried about? And then also asking parents some of those same questions. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see the general findings from this work came out here. And just on the staff side, there was just across the board, there was a recognition that new media is important. It's in the lives of families and kids. We've got to kind of get our hands around it, or figure out how to be helpful in this and guide towards learning environments for children. But to do it strategically, there was a desire for learning a lot more. And to recognize among many of the librarians that this still felt new to them, even though a lot of these are skills that are absolutely foundational to your work, you know, that curation and the programming and the reader's advisory, and then you bring those skills to new media, but still it can feel like this is new territory, and to just recognize that and to kind of move within that understanding. And then on the parent side, we held discussion groups in both of these programs. And you'll see here some of the different findings that came from those discussion groups. And I'll move to the next slide in a moment to give you some even more depth, but really recognizing that parents themselves are still grappling with new media, and they're not always like, well, this is a good thing, because it not necessarily is. It really depends on the quality of the content, the context, and the child, right? So we'll go to the next slide. This is just going to show you the next couple of slides. I'll take you through some of the insights we got from parents in discussion groups when we were able to do in-person focus groups with them. This was back in 2017, 2018. And the next slide shows you some of the really interesting things that started coming from these parent focus groups that we did. The key really for a lot of this was to recognize that just like every child is different, every family is different, every parent is different, and we did not at all have a one-size-fits-all kind of answer coming at us. In fact, it was not at all homogenous. It was a huge range in terms of how parents were thinking about media in the home with their kids, and how libraries could or could not be useful to them. So you'll see here on the screen two of the big differences. For example, there were some parents who were like, you know what, this stuff is so easy for kids. They're just, you know, they can do this without me. They don't really need me there. And then we had some other parents who were much more like, I am with my kids at all times, and we have a rule at home, no screens. So it really across the spectrum. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that there were also like just some fascinating comments that would come from parents when we asked them what their needs were in the library. Right. So, and these were parents of children ages 0 to 8. So that age range also, I think, is reflected in what you see here, and you have to recognize that as well. But we had one parent who said, I just really like the library to provide more showcase cinema for her children. She was not happy with Disney videos and things like that. She wanted more what she thought of as quality media. We had a parent who was wanting no screens at all in the children's section. And then there was another parent who wanted more screens and wanted them to be large scale touch screens so that her children could start to learn without having to use a keyboard, could start to learn how to use the various catalogs and online kind of databases and do some keyword searching. So it was really across the board, right? So I won't go through all the rest of the slides. We'll have them in the slide deck for you so you can look at them later if you'd like, but they were, yes, thanks, Carrie. There were just all these different responses that were coming from parents. And so I offer that to just say that one way you might want to start this work yourself in your own library, or perhaps with just a couple of your friends and colleagues, is to do some of your own. It could be informal kinds of assessments and conversations with families and with staff, or you could develop something that's a little more structured. So now I want to bring into a conversation Conni and Amy, who were part of these programs. Conni, as I mentioned, was the really just incredible orchestrator and conductor of our that first program that we had, and she was at that time at Harford County Library in Maryland, and is now Baltimore. And then Amy was part of our Illinois, mostly Chicago focused work, and that was doing that at Skokie. In that project, it was Chicago Public Library, Skokie, and Schaumburg. So we were doing some across library system work in that one as well. And what I want to do is just, engage you guys a little bit in a quick conversation about what it was like to be part of these programs. So I wanted to go to you first, Conni, since you were the one really spearheading that Maryland program back in 2018. When you think back to that, is there a big aha that jumps out at you? Like, this is something we learned from that moment, from that year together?
Absolutely, yeah. There's one story in particular that I think encapsulates a lot of the different elements that we looked at. And as you shared, Lisa, a huge part of what we did in that grant cycle was talking to families and learning how they felt about media and how they felt about the library, but also talking to staff on what they thought about media and how they felt it did or didn't fit in their work at the library. We had a particular story where one of our media mentors, we had selected a number of librarians to be lead media mentors, and they would go into different branches to talk to staff and see, you know, where they are in this process of learning about new media and talking to families about it. So she went to one of our branches and she was talking to two librarians in particular. Both of them were librarians who presented story times. They were both children's librarians. They both worked the reference desk, worked on collections and everything like that. So their jobs, they had pretty much the same job, right? And they worked with the same audience. The same families would come in to see both of their story times. One of them was very clear. She said, you know, I really don't think our community has any interest in media. I never get like new media, screens. I never get any questions about it. Families don't really seem to care about apps. They're not really interested in it. You know, they never talk about it in story times. I never hear about it at the reference desk. That was her perception. Mm-hmm. Same exact library, same exact community, same exact families. The second librarian said, oh my goodness, this is all I get questions about. Families are coming to me all of the time, asking me questions about apps, what device they should look at for their child, how much time their child should be spending on the screen. And we were really curious about that. We were like, that's amazing. How is it that these two people have completely different experiences in the same branch? And it turned out the only difference that we could surmise was really that the first librarian, the one who never got those questions, never used devices or anything like that in her story times, whereas the second one did. And it was this really simple demonstration that, to me, you know, one of my big takeaways was the only way that we'll ever express or that we'll ever convince the world that this is something that we are experts on is if we actually do it, right? We actually have to show them. We actually have to use those devices in our programs. We have to put them out on the floor. We have to talk about it. So that was the first really simple one. And the second one was that families do need this information. There's no question. Families don't know where to go often, and they need it. And they will go when somebody shows them that they know, right? That's who they'll go to. So it was, again, it was one of those where it was like, well, my goodness, Eureka, right? Such a simple example, but it demonstrated it very well.
Yeah, thank you, Connie. It's such an interesting, I just want to, what we bring to our model for families and communities is fascinating. So Amy, let me ask you about moving to the Chicago and, you know, Skokie and Schaumburg experience. What kind of stuck out for you about that? And I'll just remind everybody that this was like in the thick of the pandemic, right? So we were doing this pretty much all through 2020, and we concluded in December of 2020. But yeah, what jumped out at you? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Dog again. So for me, one of the biggest things that really came to the forefront was, you know, that was a time where people were like, you didn't know what the next week was going to be in terms of what your work would look like or how you would deliver services. But the really unifying factor was that people were there for those conversations because they saw a need in their community, and they just deeply are tied to wanting to serve the community. And that was an aha moment for me, because when I got involved in this work, you know, very early media mentorship in like 2012, 2013, there was just a lot of resistance, and it amongst a lot of library practitioners, and it seemed to be really focused on everything about the technology, like should you or should you not. And what these conversations really centered for me is that the question isn't technology, the question is the families that we serve. And when we're able to tap into the like spirit of those of us who do this work, who are in it to support our communities, like that's the thing that can help us reorient how we're approaching things, because like our goal is different, right? The goal here isn't to like just unilaterally use technology. It's to, connect with the families in our communities in the ways that they need. And that's something we feel deeply and we can tap into as leaders, as peers. Oh, you're on mute, Lisa.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say it's interesting. It's what you center for them and in your work. So we're going to run out of time here, but I'll just ask both of you this last kind of question. And I see that there's some good questions in the chat too, so keep them coming and we'll try to answer them that way as well. But it feels like there is something about this peer-to-peer piece of this that is important. And I wonder if you could both kind of elaborate on that a little bit versus maybe other models that are more top-down.
Yeah, I can start with that. So one of the things that I think is really valuable about the peer learning and support model is that you have a lot of avenues from which you can take in ideas and information. And one of the things that, again, was in some ways unique for the Illinois cohort, because we were in the pandemic and so many of the youth staff who were participating in that were themselves parents or caregivers. Mm-hmm. It was a very concrete example of some of the ideas for like ways to utilize technology in a like productive, media literate, appropriate context sort of way. Those didn't come from other like library contexts necessarily. They came from people speaking from their personal experience. And like when you're having these conversations with people who are engaged in the work, not only because they're a librarian, but also because this is something that they just do as part of their day-to-day, you can learn so many new things. Like I think about storytime folks, online storytime folks at my library, who it was one parent who had been experimenting with using digital stories on like Hoopla over Zoom so that they could connect with grandparents in a different state since everyone was isolated separately. And that like transformed how the whole team ended up thinking about doing online story times, going from that personal context into that professional. So you just have so many more avenues to like learn and be inspired.
Mm-hmm.
And I would add too, I think, having moved from being a peer of those who present story times, for example, to being a manager of those who present story times, I have noticed, I hope I'm non-threatening, but I have definitely noticed a difference in the way that my presence as a manager affects the conversations I have with people. Right. So I think the removing that layer of management from the conversation is really helpful. I think that's it really transforms the librarian's development, their ability to make this not about a performance review, to make it about just improving service to the public.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you guys both so much. And as we continue here, especially as we're in a moment going to move to a panel where we're hearing from more librarians and their work on the ground. If anybody in the chat wants to add in, what it's meant for them to have peer-to-peer sharing, or if they have any examples to share with us about how, whether it's just book clubs or some sort of events they've held in their own spaces that are peer-to-peer, please jump in to the chat and let us know about them. Because it does feel like that's part of the secret sauce for a lot of this. So thank you guys both so much. It's been really fun to be doing these programs with you. I'm going to turn it over now, I think, back to Dorothy, who's going to take us into the next part of the afternoon, which is a super exciting piece. So we have such incredible speakers coming up. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Amy and Connie. That was fantastic. What I'm going to do here is bring up the slideshow again, just for a couple of slides. And we have three wonderful panelists who will share their experiences, and they've been able to put effective practices into action. Now, after they present and highlight some of the work that they're doing, we really want to open this up for conversation and hope that not only sharing in the chat, but if at least a few of you would be willing to open your mic and share some of the things that you're already doing or would hope to do, like to do, and so that we're all learning together. There's no guarantee that technology that people will use it to lead to better understanding. Librarians are poised to help, not to tell others what to think, but to help them to develop the skills, for example, to discern fact and fiction. And this panel will reinforce the idea that libraries offer the social connections, the motivation for learning and growing, but can also serve as a vital link to technology, digital navigation, tips on developing those media literacy skills. So when we refer to librarians as mentors, we are not making them teach. Learning is the priority. So librarians can help others learn how to learn. And mentorship is an opportunity to demonstrate learning skills. And my observation and experience is that a good mentor gets excited about learning and learns, as much as everyone else, probably even more. So let's see, I wanted to just say how this panel kind of came together. I had the pleasure of learning about Nigel White's stellar work in Hartford, Connecticut, and it was actually through a New America conference that Lisa had offered back in 2020. And this is a photo of Dominique, one of Nigel's mentees, who discovered his talent and love of photography as a teenager. Now, for my work with the Erickson Institute, I reached out to the Alaska State Library and Brooklyn Public Library, where I have a few colleagues. I worked in Queens Library years ago for about 5 years and just love that whole New York collaboration among Brooklyn, New York Public, and Queens. But I was looking for some librarians who specialized in media literacy and tech learning, and ended up having wonderful phone conversations with Teresa Quiner from Alaska and Kimberly Conti from Brooklyn. So all three of these panelists will offer a model of what's working. And they've created these effective practices that can be a good starting point, I think, for any library who wants to up the ante in this area. So we're in for a real treat, and I'm going to take a little bit of time here to introduce each of them and go through brief biographies for each of them. So Kimberly Conti is the Early Literacy Outreach Associate for Brooklyn Public Library. She works for the Youth and Family Services area. Kimberly works on family engagement activities such as caregiver workshops on the importance of the 5 early literacy skills: talk, sing, read, write, and play. And she offers tech play interactive recipes and how to create a personal family screen time plan or media plan. Kimberly has established strong community partnerships that help the library focus on media literacy, including Common Sense Media, which I think is based in New York, and WNET PBS in New York. Teresa Quiner is the library director for Skokie Consortium Library, and she's an adjunct faculty instructor for the University of Alaska Fairbanks on the Skokie campus. That's in Bethel, Alaska. Teresa has taught library research classes for Yupik teachers and local elders with a focus on learning to navigate digital resources, and offers a presentation and learning game to youth in camps and high schools on media literacy and digital navigation. Her library is a test site for the Molly of Denali television show, and I'm sure most of you have heard of that. It's a PBS kids program produced by WGBH TV in Boston. Teresa and her library offer many educational resources and provides culturally relevant programming to the community. And Nigel White is the program production and engagement coordinator for Hartford Public Library in Connecticut. And he is a media arts professional with a focus on filmmaking and increasing access to digital media literacy. He offers opportunities for engagement, creation through various forms of media. With a decade of experience with youth empowerment and development, Nigel continues to cultivate innovative ways to create access to opportunities for educational and career growth. Nigel recently co-developed the Hartford Public Library's HPL Studios. It's a new initiative that has recently begun creating resources, tools, and partnerships to support artists and creative learners of all ages through media production. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and I want to start with a general question for Kimberly. In your early literacy outreach efforts, you have interwoven a very special focus on media literacy and tech learning, and found supportive community partners. So what are the kinds of programs and outreach efforts you offer to help families find a balance in life when using media and tech?
Yes, so our pathway into this started with a grant from the state. And so we were able to sort of look into, we had a little bit of funding, wasn't huge, it was just enough to create some materials. So we worked for about a year on creating and getting to know the information. And then we created a screen time planner with Common Sense. We created some materials to hand out. We did things on our website, but basically all the workshops, I go into schools and preschools around Brooklyn. All the workshops we offer are the early literacy workshops and screen time workshops. So I think the workshop is a big part of what we do, but actually we haven't really done a lot of training with the librarians. And so I'm really inspired to do that. We actually have a plan to do it in January now because of you guys inspiring that. So I'm excited about that.
Well, thank you. Did you want to show a few slides to give us a sense of some of the things you are doing with families?
Okay, so
I think you'll be able to share.
okay, so this is sort of I do an hour-long workshop where we have a lot of discussion around screen time with parents, but I just wanted to kind of take you through, like I always talk about read, play, talk, write, sing as the basis of everything a child needs in their early years. I focus on 0 to 5. So I'm talking about early childhood. But one of the things I think librarians can do right away is give tips during story time. So come up with tips, research. There's so much information on screen time strategies and information, guidelines, everything you could incorporate, lots of tips and ideas for parents into your story time, which what I just learned will enhance their questions towards you about ways that they can bring media in a healthy way to their child's life. We're not dissuading the use of media as a learning tool or its presence in the world. Obviously, Nigel does all kinds of awesome things with media with kids. So we're not saying that media is bad. but we want it to be healthy in these early years. So we also created a couple pages on our website. We have a screen time blog that is sort of permanent, and family media page. You can access them. I feel like I might not have time to show them right now, but maybe someone who has access to my slideshow can put them in the chat right now, because I don't want to take up too much time. But they're great. You could create pages just like them on your website for free, right? You can also, for free, just hand out resources that you make. Maybe you make a flyer of recommendations of places to find apps and things, because you don't want to recommend necessarily too many specific apps because they don't always have a long life. There are a few you can definitely recommend, like Khan Academy is an amazing math app that's completely free, and it was designed to be free, and it's such an amazing resource. My kids used it their whole childhood. So there are certain things you can find and recommend. But we created tech play recipes, which you're welcome to use as long as you credit us. My supervisor said you're welcome to use all our materials as long as it retains our logo. So the other website that we always recommend is Common Sense. They're actually based out of San Francisco, but they do have an office in New York, and the education director is in New York. And her name's Tali Horowitz, and she has become a friend of mine, and we work together. We've done workshops together. She does workshops in schools. We are really, I think, the only people in Brooklyn, I don't know about the whole city, but I'm pretty sure we're the only ones doing workshops around media literacy. And it's insane because we live in New York and there's so many things going on, but I feel like I'm the only person doing this screen time workshop in Brooklyn. So anyway, she's been great to work with. We made a media planner. I'll show you in a second. So this is like an idea of their website. You should get to know it. It's so great. They have ratings and reviews and best of lists. So some of the parts of the website, they ask you to pay, but I'm not sure. I think there's a way around that. But the lists, the best of lists are always free. They always have all these lists. They have things by age. Like I said, I could go way into this, but I won't, but there's ages. They have movies, books, apps, things parents need to know. So tips. They have Latino, which is all in Spanish. They have research that they've done for 13 years around media literacy. So please look into, get to know Common Sense. They have a digital citizenship week that was, I think, last week. And I think it's a great way, like you could highlight it in your library. You could do something as an event around it, like really saying, hey, it's fall. Let's look at how kids are learning and using tech, and bring in anything. I'm sure Common Sense creates materials and stuff. And then also you could go on from there. It could be like your start to your year, including media literacy in your story times. This is a great map, PBS. It's called WNET in New York. This is a great map of all their shows. I put it in my workshops. And so they have science. So it shows what each show concentrates on, and really like how the show helps children learn in different ways. So they even have social emotional shows, right? So Daniel Tiger is all about emotions. And so if a parent is struggling with something emotional regarding their toddler, they can, you can say, watch Daniel Tiger. And then they also have apps and games that your child can play that are age appropriate, and everything is written by educators. So it's completely safe and actually good for their learning. So I always recommend this. We always talk about learning with tech. There's ways parents can incorporate technology into their kids' learning that is not passive, because I think a lot of young children just passively take in tech and they don't actually use it creatively. So these are some ways we talk about that. And then we have our Brooklyn tech play recipes that we've created. We have a lot. There's not just 3, but there are ways that parents can use, like maybe their phone or their computer or an app that we've recommended to touch on different learning things, and then the process, and then what they'll get out of it, right? So these are things you can also use. And this is our family screen time planner. And it has a whole inside. I won't go into it for the sake of time, but it's really amazing. There's a link on our website. So if you go to our family media page on our website, in the column, in the side column, there's a link to the screen time planner that can be printed. So you're welcome to print them out and give them away at your. And then I just quickly had slides about the basic points that I really accentuate. So number 1 is choose high quality programming, co-view, co-play, ask thinking questions like you would if you were reading a book with your child, ask thinking questions around shows, and model positive habits in your home. And then this is sort of the ending checklist. And that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. And we've had a little bit going on in the chat here. Somebody was asking about Common Sense Media and recently adding a paywall. And someone responded that if you clear your cookies, that should make it go away.
Yeah, there's something tricky about it. Tally told me about it, that there is a way. I think there's also a way, if you say you can't afford it, that they will bypass you. It kind of bugs me because it used to be completely free. And obviously it's someone who can't afford it has to navigate, which isn't very friendly, but in general, it's an amazing resource. So do what you can to use it. Yeah.
Yeah, so and maybe that could be a follow-up, if you wouldn't mind looking into that. Like, how could we as librarians help families who might not be able to afford it to work around?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, excellent. And Lisa reminded us that is it Media Literacy Week this week? And I know, Kimberly, you were celebrating. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, just this week's Media Literacy Week, and there's groups that do digital citizenship, and sometimes they overlap, and sometimes I think that was a different week was a Digital Citizenship Week. But both of those are great places to like follow hashtags and get more resources.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you, Kimberly. And next, I wanted to ask Nigel if, with all the work you've been doing with youth empowerment and development over many years, if you could share some of the highlights and also the impact that you've been seeing, and tell us about your efforts to expand your scope of media production. That sounds really interesting.
Thank you for the questions. And if it's okay, I'll share my screen now as I go through in response to your question. One sec. Can you all see my screen? Okay, perfect. So pretty much my work with youth around digital media literacy pretty much started with an organization called IREX out of Washington, D.C.
Nigel, I just wanted to say we can see your screen, but it's just showing a blank. Click to exit full screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Give me one.
There you go. Great. We're good to go.
Okay, we'll go this route. Apologies. So again, our work, my work and our work here at our HPL library system started with IREX in Washington, D.C. The organization was actually connected to one of our former colleagues, Gabby Barnes, and she pretty much started a relationship with this organization, understanding that they had resources, a full book, much to break down, learn to discern, right, understanding misinformation, disinformation, just understanding how to safely engage with different digital and media resources, right, and platforms. And from that relationship, we had the opportunity to present at the nominally 2019, nominally 2019, it says 22, but nominally 2019 conference. And during that time, I would say that was definitely one of the highlights for me, working with young folks around digital and media literacy. The two young folks in the bottom image with me, Tyrus Wilson and Tariq Warren, they had joined me. They were two of my mentees at the time, two young adults, and they were both into media production as far as making music, beat production and things of that nature. But they were also very intertwined with just what's going on in the world of music, right, and mainstream music more so. So pretty much we started conversations around digital literacy, those two gentlemen, just by understanding the different gossips and topics that are going around their favorite artists and things of that nature. And we just started asking them, well, how do you know this stuff is true, right? So long story short, we had the opportunity to pull Tyrus and Tariq in on some programming, some peer mentoring programming, right? That we had done with them, but then that they had done with some younger teens and led for some younger teens around misinformation and disinformation. From that opportunity, again, the Nominate Conference came about, and I felt it was a great opportunity to expand their horizons and show them that, okay, because you've gained this information, right? Because you've done the work to make sure that other people are learning this information as well. There's something to be said about that. So we were able to pull them down to DC with us, and they presented with us, during which time we met Lisa. So that was a pleasure. The next, and pretty much from that point, as you'll see in this bottom image on the right, you'll see Dominique Maldonado again, who is a photography and filmmaker. That he's a photographer and a filmmaker. He is actually currently at University of Harvard studying cinematography. So he started photography in UMedia in our teen center, working with me around shooting just different portraits and things of his peers, not necessarily around peer mentorship, but just using digital and media-based resources and tools that we had in the space to engage, to create, and to produce content. So from that opportunity, he broadened his horizons and started looking at other opportunities and resources, and now he's a full-time college student studying cinematography. So for me, those are a couple small examples, or a couple examples of highlights during my prep time and process with media literacy and digital literacy with young people. The next slide. So I have a video. I will play it, but I'll just play maybe about a minute or so of it. But on the right, I'll start with this image. So on the right, this is an image of one of our young people at one of our community branches, neighborhood branches, engaging with the Oculus, the VR headset, right? And that's something that we started with in UMedia during COVID. Well, actually right before COVID, but as we started to kind of get out of the height of COVID, that's when we started to bring young folks in on appointment basis to actually just get engaged with the new equipment that we had since closing. And this was one of those moments. The young folks love it. They do anything from spray paint and design, spray paint on walls virtually, for those young people who are, visual artists. And you have some people doing the Beat Saber challenges, right? And then just some young people who are interested in actual world building. So I think with the metaverse and all these new developments in technology and virtual and augmented reality, a lot of the young folks have been introduced to that in different forms and are now interested in actually creating worlds of world building. So I'll play this video really quick. We have a second. Digital development is definitely a big part of what UMedia is about. What inspired me to be a mentor as I started here at UMedia was I wanted to find a space where I could bring together my love for photography and just art in general, and a passion for serving my community, particularly serving young people. From our perspective, I wanted to make sure that I came back to provide something back to to the young people as somebody who provided for me. Nigel like really opened the doors for me, and at first he saw that I liked it. Like he saw that I was paying attention to him doing this stuff like that. So he tried to sit me down, but I was still like in the mindset like, what am I doing here? I don't know what to do yet. Every time you see me, like, hey Don, come here. You want to talk? Like, you want to see what I'm doing now? Like, he'll make it cool. He'll shoot videos, take pictures, and I just tell her.
The thing about new media is that it is a lot more one-on-one as opposed to myself with 20 students. And I like that because it's personal. I get to know the students. I also get to know what they want. So I might have a lesson plan, and I might need to tweak it so that it's personal.
I just like pages. I was going like a pamphlet.
It was unified that there was a position for mentorship.
I won't play too much, but just to finish this off, this was one of our recent interns, Kemuel. He's an IT wizard, and he was over last summer. He was actually in media, pretty much building computers and teaching his peers about building computers. Some of those computers we still have in media space. Some of those computers were actual prizes and things for young people from competitions that media had over the summer. I'm sorry, Dorothy, was it okay to continue on?
Yeah, please do. Sure.
Thank you. And with regard to so since my time at UMedia, I've transitioned into another role at the library. As Dorothy had mentioned, I am the program production and engagement coordinator. It's a long name. And pretty much what that means is that I introduce and or create resources, tools, and opportunities, right, for people to engage with different forms of technology and different forms of media for the purpose of encouraging them to create and not just be consumers, right? And out of this new role, and my collaboration with a couple of my other colleagues at the library came the opportunity for us to create, again, the new initiative that we call HPL Studios. HPL Studios is technically a new department, and we are in the process, well, we've started with programming around podcasting. So we currently have a podcasting program that runs about 5 weeks long. We have podcast kits that include interfaces, right? Mini interfaces, headphones, mics, etc. And it's pretty much just a process that teaches folks how to produce their own podcast programs, right? It shows them how to broadcast it and get them posted online. It shows them how to market, right, on popular digital platforms, things of that nature. So that's what we've started. The goal is to ultimately have a space, and what we will do is have a space that people can come in and actually produce any type of content in media that they are interested in. So we'll have workshops that are focused on, just pretty much as UMedia did, that are focused on teaching people anything from filmmaking to audio production to developing apps to, and beyond. And then from that, it'll also be a space that people can just at certain times come in and drop in to just create on their own and produce things, right? So again, I think the focus that HPO Studios has or comes with is the focus of helping people to be creators and not just consumers of media, right? I think it's so easy to be a consumer, and we all are consumers to a degree. But I think, again, with regard to consuming healthy media, I think consuming healthy media for me, or for what I'm looking to encourage the folks is, of course, things that will inspire and motivate positive thoughts and great energy and positive energy, but at the same time, things that will also just help you to continue to learn, and to learn the things that you care about and the things that will help you to just expand the opportunities in your own life. So as Dorothy had mentioned previously during my bio, I'm pretty much focused on things that have to do with, again, digital media and literacy studios, things that go out into the community with the help of our community outreach team, and introduce folks to just different apps that may help them with branding or marketing, right, for their own personal businesses or entrepreneur endeavors. In addition to that, one last thing I'll mention and point out is that I was also able and fortunate enough to develop a new streaming platform, music streaming platform for Hartford-based artists. It's called The Beat. We developed that. It launched in June of this year. And actually, I'll switch over and just give you a glimpse. So the platform was created, again, to encourage artists from Hartford to create music, right? If you're already doing it, great. This is an opportunity that will help you get paid for your work, right? Will help you to share your work to a larger crowd. And we'll just, again, encourage those folks to continue doing what they're doing. Once the HPO Studios is developed and the physical space is all set, again, folks will be able to come in and use that space to create their music, which hopefully will end up being on this platform. We have 2 submission rounds a year. Artists are submitting their albums. We have a group of community curators who are all folks from the community, who have all done great work in the community around media or, well, more specifically around music, but definitely around other forms of music, of other forms of media. And with that being the case, those curators pretty much select the top 5 albums based on the rubric for every submission round. And those 5 albums that get submitted for every submission round, those artists get paid $250 for the submission, just for allowing us to play their music. Downloads are free and available for anybody who has a library card. So again, we are also encouraging artists, while encouraging artists to create, we are also trying to encourage patrons and other folks to actually engage in and benefit from the media and the resources that are here in their community and from their community, right? So from this, we were able to actually, again, promote more of this content and these creators. And now we have a live show being hosted by the Bushnell Theater tonight. Actually, it's our first concert. So we'll be having a concert at least once a year. Artists are, again, being supported by the Bushnell for this concert. And it's something that will just encourage and kind of double down on the media literacy and the digital literacy work that we're looking to do here, but at the same time, kind of reaching people where their interests already are and pulling them closer to the library with those resources. So that is the gist of my highlights and just the work that we're doing now.
Well, thank you so much, Nigel. I did want to just comment that, boy, if you could get some young people to create high quality apps for early childhood, that would be great with all else that you're doing. I did want to mention that in the chat, Lisa and I had commented that you are using that really key, wonderful question, how do you know? And so that was great. And Beth had noted about connected learning and providing opportunities for young people to explore interests and really connect with opportunities. So that's such a great avenue for libraries. So thank you so much. And Carrie was saying developing relationships as well. And Summer in Cecil County was commenting how well funded you are for this type of work. You know, that really is great. And we had a question. Did you say HBO or HPO, or was it just HPL, the Hartford Public Library?
Yes, I'm sorry, HPL, Hartford Public Library. Yes.
Okay, great.
We'll get some type of partnership with the HPO or something like that.
Yeah, maybe a little down the road, right?
That's the goal. And we actually, I'm sorry to actually throw something in because you reminded me. So we're actually, I've just finished working on developing a partnership with our Hartford Public Access television station. And the goal is for them to they will end up being at the Hartford Public Library, housed here. And it's going to come with plenty of opportunities for, of course, more workshops. But at the same time, it comes with a whole slew of production studios, high quality cameras that people will be able to check out for free and all these things. So again, we're really leaning on the creation part of media literacy and digital literacy. Just trying to get folks to, for one, understand what's there already and how to use it, but at the same time, understanding how they can contribute to what's out there in the world.
Right. and really capitalizing on that mentoring. I mean, that's one of the big things in your role that you've been able to do with young people. So, well, thank you. And here, Teresa, for your intro question, with your library being a small operation in a rural and remote setting, you've created a model for libraries across the country to make tech learning a priority without losing more traditional services. So how do you integrate media literacy, digital navigation, tech learning into your library services and programs?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So we are in a pretty rural place in Alaska. We're not on the road system. And so we're on, I would say, the extreme side of the digital divide. Internet access is really, really expensive here. And so and it's not unlimited. So a lot of people don't have an internet connection in their home, and people aren't necessarily growing up with the same access that's taken for granted, I would say, in the rest of the country. And so when I've taught the library research class for the college here, I've just noticed that, jumping right into database research, it's like people are not kind of at the point where they're ready for that when they're coming here as college students. And so, what I've done is I get asked to present in classrooms a lot, both with high school students and also the college classes here on campus. And I ended up developing just kind of a ready to go presentation and activity that I can do when I'm asked to do this, or when I'm asked to visit classrooms, because, we have a tiny staff, so I don't always have a ton of time to put into planning something specifically for each group that I'm invited to. So I have something kind of ready to go that I can tweak based on the age of the group that I'm working with, and, the needs of whatever they're doing. If they're working on a paper, I kind of tweak it, so that we're practicing looking up, sources of information based on what they're working on in their classes. So I can show you what I've put together, and I'm happy also to share this with anybody if you'd like to use anything that I've developed. Again, I benefit a lot from going to conferences and getting activities and programs from other libraries, and I'm happy to reciprocate that. So I'll just go ahead and show you my presentation that I've developed. Are you able to see this? It should be an orange screen. So I walk through this presentation with the students that I work with, and I always just start by explaining what information and digital literacy is, because these are terms that, a lot of people just aren't familiar with. And then I talk a lot with them about why it's important. People rely very heavily on Facebook for their news here. And, I've just found that students, they're really not, maybe it's just because of where we are, but they're really coming to college without any sort of understanding of the fact that you can't just believe everything that you read online. And I've found that this is especially apparent with older students. I've taught classes for, people who are elders, and, younger students, I think, have a little bit more of an understanding of the fact that you can't just believe everything you read online, but I think older people get more overwhelmed by trying to navigate the flood of information that's available. So we just talk a lot about how it's important both for their personal learning as well as their formal education. Again, I think you can't talk about, information literacy without touching on misinformation, disinformation, and fake news. And so we always talk a lot about that and what these different terms mean. And then I wanted to show you, actually, I'm going to go back here. I wanted to show you, I always show them this fake news quiz because, it's always really boring sitting and watching somebody talk from a PowerPoint, which is what I'm doing right now. And so this fake news quiz is a really good way to just show them why you can't. I'm going to stop my share and share this quiz now. It's a really good way to just demonstrate why you have to be really careful. Just sort of relying on your gut instinct when you're just seeing news headlines online. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you this because it's really fun and it always gets kids, laughing. And so you just go through this quiz and you give a thumbs up or a thumbs down based on whether you think this is a true headline. And then at the end of the quiz, you get a percentage of like how many you got right and how many you got wrong. And usually when I'm showing this, we also spend some time, like I tell the students to get out their phones and to start trying to find some backup information and try, I get them practicing, trying to identify whether these are real news stories. So it's a good way for them to kind of quickly put into practice, finding other sources of information that might back up, whether this is, valid information or not. It's just really silly and fun. And, it always gets them, engaged and laughing, which I always appreciate. So I am going to go back here. I'm going to share the evaluation method that I usually use. Depending on whether I'm, visiting a college classroom or a high school classroom, or, depending on the group I'm working with, I use different evaluation methods. The one that I really like for just trying to figure out if a headline that they've read on social media is true or not, I think the SIFT method works really well because it's very simple. And, we just walk through how, rather than just believing what you read, you should stop, look into more information about where you're getting this information, who published it, where are you finding it online? And then again, like finding better coverage, see if you can find backup information to verify whether, this is accurate. And then again, like we always work on practicing tracing the claims that are made in whatever article we're looking at back to the original context to make sure that it's represented in an accurate way. So I think this is a really straightforward technique that has worked really well, but there's, there's a lot of different acronyms for different evaluation methods, and they're all pretty good. It's always really important to talk about, where should they be going for the best source of information on their topic. And again, like, frequently that is a database if they're, doing a research paper for one of their classes, but that's obviously not always going to be the best place to go if you're just, learning for your own personal enrichment. And so we, we always talk about, the difference between print and internet resources and why you have to be a little bit more careful sometimes when you're finding information online. And then we talk about just different places you can go for information that you can just generally rely on to be a little bit more trustworthy, but again, to always be very careful, to not just believe what they're reading. And then we, of course, talk a lot about bias, and this is always, a really important thing to cover whenever you're talking about evaluating information. So, we always go through like some of these key things to look for, like, is the language really inflammatory, because that's always something that you want to keep an eye out for. Are they, quoting the source of information that they're referencing? Are they backing up their argument with factual evidence? Like, these are just all things that we talk through as a group. And then, so after I've gone through the presentation with students, we always end up playing this little game that I put together, which I'll share with you. So basically, I'm going to stop the share and show you. So the activity is I have, and this is something, we don't have a lot of funding with our library. So if you have construction paper and a computer, you can do this activity. I have different research topics that I've put together on construction paper. And if you open it up, you can get the different things. I would say always pick research topics that are interesting to the community that you serve. So like, something that's a huge issue in Alaska is the impact of climate change in the Arctic. This is something that people are very passionate about, and it affects us, quite a bit. And so, another one is there's a big like open pit mine that they're trying to build up the river from us, and it's a company that's had a really bad like track record with the environment. So one of the research questions that we always use is, will the Donlin Gold Mine have a negative impact on the environment? And then What I did for each topic, and I tweak this again based on what's kind of relevant, like during COVID, that gave us a ton of research, a lot of really controversial topics to use for this activity. But I have pulled a variety of research or sources of information for each topic that are what I would call quality or lesser quality sources of information, and including some very biased sources of information. So for example, I'll share my screen again. So these are some of the research topics that we have used. And again, I try to pick topics that are both controversial, but also just like things that people might want to learn for their own personal learning. Like a lot of people that move to Alaska who are new here want to learn how to do the traditional food preservation techniques, for example. And again, if you do those incorrectly, you can get very sick or get botulism. So they make for good sources of, research as well. And then here, like these are some examples of the different types of information sources that I've pulled. And so what I have students do is they are not able to see what the research question is. They have to take all of the different sources of information and sort of sort them by topic, and then as a group come up with what they think their research question is. So they'll sort all of the sources of information that reference climate change together, and then look at those sources of information and try to figure out what their research question would be. So these are some different ones that I've picked. There's one here from Greenpeace, which again is, one that you have to be a little bit more cautious with, just because it is, it's an environmental organization. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't use that information, but you do need to be aware of that bias. And then we have, like, for example, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer Environmental Impact Assessment, which I would identify as a very high quality source of information, and also the Donlin Gold Project Summary, which is published by Donlin Gold about their own project and the impact it will have on the environment. So again, I have these two different sources of information to sort of show the balance of, you have to be very careful with one sort of source of information, and the other one is one that you can rely on a little as more trustworthy. And again, I always try to include, the facts here. Like one of the sources of information is an interview with an elder who has extensive experience monitoring the local environment. We talk again as well about how sometimes the best source of information is a person who's an expert in the field, and sometimes that is, a more informal person like an elder, not necessarily a scientist, but again, it can be a trustworthy source of information. And then we always end up on the back of each source of information. I've identified if there's any biases that I see with that source of information. And so after we've sorted all of the sources of information and come up with our research question, then we open up the bias check on the back and read through any biases that we've identified, and we talk about that as a group. And so it's just a really good opportunity to discuss why we have to be careful with different sources of information. And this has just, it's worked really well because it's interactive, and I'm gonna go ahead and stop my share. And it gets students like up moving and walking around and talking about this, and there's usually a lot of laughter, and it's just worked really well, and it's been helpful for me to have this activity kind of put together and ready to go, so that I'm just ready whenever a teacher asks me to visit their classroom. And again, it can be tweaked based on the age that you're working with. So yeah, does anybody have any questions?
I did go ahead, Teresa, and share the link to your PowerPoint and also to the game that you had. So that we have that. And Kimberly.
I have a comment actually about,
yeah.
I was going to say, it's so interesting that all three of us really have a focus on using technology in healthy ways, but also navigating. Like we teach to critically think about the shows from a young age, and then carrying that, and just like how we want to teach them to use it in positive ways, right? So
to follow up on that comment, I think just from our perspective, I think teaching the young folks how to, how to perceive the information that they're taking in, right? Because naturally, again, I'm a creator myself. I've been a creator for a long time, right, in different forms. But I was able to recognize how the information that I took in throughout my life impacted the content that I create now, right? And so I think that's one of those things that I try to make sure that I'm mindful of incorporating into my mentorship style, I guess, you know what I mean? And how it impacts the actual programming that we do. So yeah, what you said just kind of hit that spot on for me.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize again that I think this is really important for youth, but also for older people. I think that navigating technology is just overwhelming. I had one elder tell me when she was taking my class, well, how do we even know what to believe? And, it's just overwhelming, if people didn't grow up with this technology. So I think it's just important to keep that in mind too. And I'm really impressed with the work that both Kimberly and Nigel are doing. That's awesome.
Likewise, thank you.
All three of you, just amazing. And let's see, some are saying that core information lit course from MLS comes back over and over again. Yeah, so there is, some information literacy courses that have provided tips that we need to apply now. I did want to, well, thank you all so much. I did want to see if anyone wanted to open it up just to take one person to see if there's anything you'd like to share or just comment on the panel's work.
I wanted to say something that I always tell parents. The reality is that this is not easy. This is a battle against American culture. So it's you have to decide for yourself what your family values are, which includes books, right? Reading to your kids, singing and making these experiences rich. But it's really gonna be up to you, because no one else is gonna make this happen. And it's not gonna be easy because they're gonna have friends who are on their phones all the time and all these other things. I mean, I'm talking about my perspective on stuff, but it's just really, yeah, I think it's an important element when you're engaging with parents that this isn't easy, right? It's not easy. So.
Good point. Well, I think, Carrie, we're ready to go on. And if you wanted to share that last slide, just to let people know that the contact information for our three wonderful panelists will be included in what you send out.
Yeah, I've been maneuvering here with lots of different slides. So hang on just a second and I will pull that up. All right, here we go. That was wonderful. I just, the breadth and depth truly of the variety of ways that we are able to see the different implementations of media mentorship and support of all of our customers is just amazing. So thank you all. Here we go. All right. And now it is my pleasure, and I am going to actually stop sharing here so I can do some maneuvering with spotlights. It is a pleasure to introduce a colleague of mine from Maryland. I have been working with Krista for the last several years, and we've crossed paths in different ways, but also it's just been a thrill to see what a great fit she will be. She's part of this panel and sharing, as Dorothy said, and as Kimberly just said, it is not easy. This is not an easy road to help us find our own way through the maze of technology and also helping our families. So it's through community partners that will help us. And Amy talked a little bit about that this morning. And now this is a great example for Krista to demonstrate that and the work that's happening between Maryland Public Television and with libraries. And so Krista is the managing director of the Early Childhood Education Services division or group with Maryland Public Television. And it's just like perfect timing because the ThinkPort part of their website and the services that they offer exists, but just yesterday they unveiled this new aspect of the ThinkPort education piece of their website and the work that they do. And it's great that Chris is here to talk to us about that work and efforts that are happening. And then also just how we're sharing a lot of common goals and working with our families and trying to fill that role of a media mentor in our communities to support families. So Krista, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you so much for inviting me here today. It is hard to even find the words to describe how impressive it is. The work that all of you do, the services that libraries provide are really just second to none. And I feel like I'm among rock stars today. So, so thank you for having me here. And as Carrie said, MPT is a huge supporter of libraries and a wonderful community partner, as are public television stations across the country. And you heard a couple of examples of that already. So to all of the Maryland folks, of course, I am here to engage with you and partner with you in many different ways. But I also wanted to offer to those of you in Indiana, if you have not connected with your public television station, I'll speak with Beth about that some more, and happy to make introductions with the station there and the wonderful education folks there as well. So yes, as Carrie said, we recently as yesterday, just launched this dedicated media literacy section on our education portal, which is called thinkport.org. And that is the education website of Maryland Public Television. And this is something we've been working on for quite a while. We serve early childhood education professionals in a variety of ways. And we have found, I have been doing this for more than 20 years at MPT. And I can tell you when I started 20 years ago, and we were just using VHS tapes in our little portable TV VCR combo that we used to carry around. We were talking about media literacy. And as the technology has grown, as the screens have, screens have actually gotten smaller themselves, but the access to them has grown so much. It's only grown in importance. And so we really wanted to make a firm commitment to talking about media literacy in those early years. And Kimberly made, some great points about that too, as did some of the speakers earlier, that when you look at the definition of media literacy that NAMLE offers, you don't necessarily immediately see that in terms of early childhood, but it really is about establishing those healthy media habits from the beginning. And when students get older and they're asked to, critically think and analyze sources, in early childhood, that really stems from kind of that sense of wonder and curiosity and inquiry. And so those are all things that we want to foster through this program. So I don't have time to go into great detail about every aspect of our media literacy work, but there are about 5 components that we're focusing on. The first being really professional development. And we offer quite a bit of professional development that's approved by the state of Maryland. on media literacy in early childhood. So in this section of our website, childcare providers and other educators can find a variety of courses, and we're always happy to work with groups if there's a cohort, an organization that wants to kind of put staff through. And I'm letting you all know that because I know in the libraries, many of you work with childcare providers in your community, and you do a lot of engagement and workshops with them as well. So we are happy to, of course, partner with the libraries to bring some of that content and some of that training in the area of early literacy or media literacy. You guys have the early literacy part covered, but we can step in with some media literacy. In the play section, there are so many resources and activities. I wish I had time to go through them all. I'll point to a couple of quick ones that I actually just added in hearing some of the conversation earlier. I'll show those in a second. And our Connect, and this is our community connection and partnership. This is kind of where I'm going to focus most of my conversation today, the ways in which we are looking to partner more with you all in terms of media mentorship throughout communities. So we'll talk about that in a second. And then the last two sections, creating media. Nigel just gave such great examples of doing that with older students. There are more limited resources for doing that with young children. But there are some, and there are tools that really help early childhood educators themselves, childcare providers themselves, understand how to create media to support learning. And there's been a lot of discussion too about different resources and research and what Common Sense Media has to offer. And so we've started to curate some of that content in our browse section. So you could very quickly find different research and publications about that. So just a couple of quick examples of some resources that we have in this section. Again, I encourage you to go to ThinkPort and look through the resources yourself, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have once you look around. But this is the framework that we came up with here in Maryland. We, of course, build on the 3 C's that have been talked about and all of the different media literacy concepts. And so we've decided that we would take a little bit of the different approach than to focusing on screen time necessarily, but more in terms of how you're using screens. So more about the quality than the quantity. And that's our media steps. And of course, that's an acronym: select, talk, explore, play. And we have a little planning form here. This is directed towards childcare providers or other educators that are working with groups of students. But we've heard from educators that they would love to see some minor tweaking so that they could actually share with parents too, resources that they might use at home. As it's been discussed, really starts with content. And so, selecting the content is really the key. And then it's what you do with it. It's all the engagement that's necessary, right? It's the talking to get the critical thinking going, using the media to really just be a spark, sort of that springboard for learning where you're going to go explore more about a topic. And of course, play, it's essential to how kids learn. And so sometimes, people are surprised to hear how much public television talks about learning away from screens. But we really are focused on what our best practices, what is developmentally appropriate in early childhood. And we feel strongly that PBS Kids has really great content. But again, that's the springboard, right? That's the springboard to get kids learning in a real hands-on way. One more resource I'll share real quick because it, again, just talked about a few times. PBS Kids has all of these great resources that are kind of ready to go. All of the PBS Kids shows, This is our learning goals chart, and it breaks down what is the age group for each show and what is the educational focus of each show. So you can get copies of this. I know Carrie's going to share a couple of websites where you can find different content and information. But this is a great resource. There's also app cards that we give out there. They just focus on very specific PBS Kids apps, what the learning goals are. And then there's a QR code. So when you're handing stuff to parents right away, they can scan it and find that app immediately. So again, it's about choosing, right? Selecting that content. So lots of resources there. And again, I'm happy to help direct and find additional information you're looking for to share with families. But the real focus of today is on our Early Learning Media Ambassadors program. That's our ELMA program. And Carrie and many of the wonderful library staff on today's call have been really helpful in trying to think about and craft this ambassadors program that MPT is now launching, and we are excited to work in partnership with libraries. You all are wonderful media mentors doing so much great work with families and getting the word out about media literacy. But there are lots of people in your community, and we're hoping that we can engage with some of the other early childhood professionals and stakeholders and educators that will also kind of take this message into their programs, into their learning environments, into their professional networks, their child care association groups that they're working with, and directly with their families to share information about media literacy. As I said, we have several different professional development options. We have courses, we have resources. So we are really looking to recruit and train some folks throughout the community to become these ambassadors and work together with the libraries to be that local media mentor. You know, we're a statewide agency. We are not necessarily in communities deeply as you all are. So we are really excited to kind of ramp up our partnership together and see ways in which we can provide resources and content that can support getting the messages out across your community about the importance of media literacy in early childhood. So again, who are the ambassadors that we're looking for? Primarily, as I said, we work largely with childcare providers, and I know many of you do as well. So I think we have a nice overlap there. And so we're looking for those that really, have a strong desire to, really support families in this way. And we hear often from the providers that we work with that media has a really big impact on children's learning, their behavior, kind of the habits and the ways in which family come into their programs. Every day. Sometimes, the kids will come in holding a tablet and they will leave with a tablet for that ride home. And again, it's not about judgment on that. It's about just making healthy, sound decisions about that screen time. So we really want to train them on utilizing all of these resources that we have to, and not only that the resources offered by MPT and PBS Kids, but all of the resources that the libraries also have to offer and other Maryland organizations as well, that we can really help kind of curate that and get that information out more into the community. What we're asking our ambassadors to do is we really want them to kind of get these messages, get this training, and really, serve as leaders, not only, in sharing information, but really demonstrating these sound media literacy skills. I think Dorothy said earlier, mentorship is a lot about, demonstrating and modeling really, best practices. And so that's what we're looking for with this program. And we are thinking that, you all do so many great programs in your libraries already, and I'm quite certain that everyone can benefit from more help these days, right? So we would love to train some of these educators who might, with some support with library staff, be the ones who can lead some of these media literacy activities with families in the library, together with library staff. We have many resources from PBS Kids of family engagement sort of activities and workshops that are already put together. So through a small amount of grant funding that we have, we can provide all of these resources and information, and even provide a small stipend to the ambassadors to help and support this kind of engagement with families in the libraries. So I know that my time is probably up already. I don't have my clock on, but I just wanted to enter a couple of cute pictures. You can't get enough of cute faces in the library. This is just some examples of some activities we did with the Enoch Pratt Library in Baltimore. This is the Walbrook Branch Library, where we held several family engagement events. The one in the middle, you can see that's from a show called Ready, Jet, Go that explores space. And, parents and grandparents and cousins and big brothers, little sisters, and everyone was really involved in building spacesuits for their stuffed animals, or, building a rover that we would test over different terrains. And the last picture you see on the right is from Molly of Denali, which you heard about a little bit earlier, in which we really celebrate family tradition and look at culture. That show focuses largely on Alaska Native values. And so part of that workshop is honoring the land that we come together on in the beginning of every workshop. And most of us don't know anything about the land that we come together on, but you all at the library do. You're wonderful. We've had some wonderful experiences with library staff bringing in, these amazing books that introduce that concept to families. So, this is just a great example how we take a piece of media as just, again, that springboard to spark interest in learning, and then move more deeply into, family engagement and hands-on learning sort of activities. So my contact information is here, but I know it's in the resources as well as all of our websites and things that I mentioned today. There's also a Google form, I think, that Carrie is sharing as well for anyone interested in getting more information about the OMA program, or if you'd like to participate. So thank you very much.
Krista, thank you very, very much. It's very exciting. And with the ambassador program, I just want to double check. I know that we've chatted about that in Maryland. If there was interest from a library in Indiana, could they fill that out and see what other opportunities, if it's just a Maryland centered project at this time, or if they could seek any more information from you?
I am happy to share any information or resources that we have, or direct you to where they are available, from a national perspective, the PBS Kids content. I wouldn't be able to provide any of the grant funding or stipends or that sort of thing for staff outside of Maryland, but I'm always happy to share resources.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other questions for Krista? There's some great comments in the chat. All right. Thank you. And we will share the resources with everyone after today. And it's just exciting to see all the intersections we have here to support families. So thank you very, very much. And I am going to turn it over to Amy. She is going to get us started on a little activity.
Yes. All right. Well, we've heard from some absolutely great folks talking a lot about like the programming and the curation sides of media mentorship that we talked about. So now this is going to be a little bit of a group exercise in some of the advisory pieces. So we're going to drop in the links a scenario slide deck. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to go into 12 randomly generated breakout groups. And when you're in your breakout group, if you can read through your scenario together as a group, there's just one scenario that you will have, whichever scenario matches your group number. And then as a group, spend a few minutes discussing the strategies that you have used or could use to address that specific advisory opportunity. The slides have edit access for everybody. So when you're in your group, please make some notes on your slides to jot down your thoughts on ways you could respond to that, patron question, because Carrie will be sharing all of these out later as part of the resources. And while you're in your group, select a spokesperson who might share back. We're probably going to have time to share like one or two pieces of response from the breakout groups. So it'll be a pretty rapid activity. Once you're in your rooms, you'll be in breakout rooms for about 6 minutes. So again, click on that link right now for the scenario slide deck, because that's what you're going to need to access. And then whichever group number you're in, that is the scenario question you should go to. If you have any questions, you can pop back out and ask for help. Look forward to hearing what you discuss. All right, welcome back, everybody. I know that was a quick conversation, but hopefully it got the juices flowing in terms of thinking about the advisory aspect. I'd like to ask for just 1 or 2 volunteers to share what your scenario was and maybe one way that you talked about potentially responding. Anyone feeling up to sharing? Probably don't want me to just randomly call someone.
No.
Go, Sasha. Okay. Sasha and then Summer. Great.
Okay. All right. So we were group 11, which is a road trip. Parent comes in saying that they're getting ready for a long road trip. And how do I keep my kids entertained? And as a parent who drives to Iowa every single year with my kids to see my husband's family, this is what I do. Which is it all depends on what your technology capabilities are and your price points and all those things as caveats. But some options would be specific long car ride games. We have magnetic tic-tac-toe. We have car ride bingo that I do with my 8-year-old. Both my kids have their own devices. So I load them up with, I download stuff on Disney Plus, PBS games, and PBS Kids TV shows. My daughter will download books from Epic and Overdrive for her school for listening to books. And then my car is equipped with an entertainment center. So I have a bunch of Disney and Pixar movies that live in my car as just road trip movies so that they don't get stale and they don't get overplayed at home, and they're a special treat for in the car for long car rides. And those are the kinds of things. And then this last year actually was the first time we were able to hook up the Switch into the car, and my kids were able to play Mario Kart with each other in the car while we were driving. But varying degrees, depending on price point, depending on devices, depending on, all those caveats. But preloading stuff on devices from all the streaming apps is clutch if you have them.
Yes, I thank you so much for sharing. I love how you're in the scenario relating to the the parent as a fellow parent. And I know you mentioned talking about things at different price points, but what I also really want to point out is that you talked about lots of different ways of engagement. So things for the kids to do on their own, things that are analog, things that are digital, things to interact, things to talk through. So there's a lot of variety there. And that's something really important to keep in mind. Again, thinking about the context of being in the car. And I'm guessing you're probably a Maryland to Iowa person based on how much entertainment you picked, but yeah. Summer, can I have you share?
We were group number 10, and our question, the patron asks if age 10 is appropriate age to get her daughter a cell phone, a smartphone.
Yeah. Appropriate is always an interesting word for us.
Right, right. So, you know, we initially discussed it's not a judgment question. So really finding out how the patron wants her daughter to use the phone, if that, you know, and then getting reference information on that, like setting up parental controls, if that's a concern. If the concern is more amount of time on the smartphone, finding information about that, recommendations, things like that. So sort of doing reference interview techniques to find out what they really specifically want to know regarding a smartphone purchase, because if they're asking about getting the smartphone, at that point they're thinking about how it's going to be used in probably in some specific ways.
Yeah, I really love how you reference using those reference interview questions, Summer, and taking what is often asked as basically a yes or no question, should I do this or not? And instead looking at, well, how do you want to use it? And then how can we support you in figuring out the details? So excellent librarian work applied to this scenario.
Thank you.
So again, you'll get the notes from all of the sessions with the notes that get shared after our training today. So you will have lots more ideas to peruse. But for now, I'm going to pass it on for what's next.
Yeah, so one thing that Carrie and I wanted to make sure you all got from today was a plan for how you might lean further into media literacy and mentorship at your libraries. And I think what we just did was a great start to that. But up next, Dorothy is going to lead us in an activity that will hopefully help you process what we've discussed today some more, and maybe even begin developing a plan that might work for your own unique community and library. So Dorothy, you want to take it away?
Thank you. And Carrie, could I share my screen? So what we're going to do here is take a look at, is the PowerPoint coming up here? Great.
Yes.
Thank you. And do this.
We're seeing your presenter view, just FYI.
Did I correct that? Yeah.
I think so, yes.
Okay, great. So what we're going to use here, and we're going to move pretty quickly. Some of you may have heard of The Six Thinking Hats by Dr. Edward de Bono. And Dr. de Bono actually died last year at 88. He was known as and considered by many to be the world's leading authority in creative and conceptual thinking. And he authored 75 books on the topic. He held faculty appointments at Harvard, Oxford, and Cambridge, England. And what I'm going to do is just take you through just how these hats work. So the exercises is involving how to evoke different parts of our thinking ability. So the white hat is focused on objective information and knowledge. The red hat elicits feelings and intuition. The yellow hat is the logical positive, look for possible opportunities and benefits. The green hat helps us find new creative ideas. The black hat is the logical troubleshooting, why a proposal or theory might not work. And that's probably the most important hat. There was a story of a chocolate company years ago who had taken a de Bono thinking course and realized that one of their candy bars, which was a delicious candy bar and had great marketing opportunities, failed because they didn't focus enough on what they call black hat thinking to troubleshoot, because they did not gear up their production to be able to handle the popular demand of the candy bar, and eventually they weren't able to handle it. So logical troubleshooting is very important. The blue hat helps us manage the thinking process, see the overview, and create a summary. So this is our challenge statement to help us summarize the learning for today. And this is the learning that you're going to be thinking about individually for you and your library. How can you create more learning opportunities for your community on media literacy, digital navigation, and tech learning? So I'm going to take you through each of the hats, and I'm going to time it. You're going to have a very limited amount of time to focus on each prompt. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the yellow hat. And here's the question for the yellow hat. What are all the possible advantages in solving this challenge? So again, the prompt is how to create more learning opportunities for your community. So I'm going to give you 45 seconds for this prompt. What are all the possible advantages? And if you could just, type that into the chat, that would be great. Okay, great. More confident parents. Oh, there we go. More confident parents, less anxiety about their issues, better informed, build community, closing the digital divide. Excellent. All kinds of wonderful. Yes, spot fake news. Excellent. So we're going to go on now to the white hat. And let me just type that in. So what knowledge do I need? And how do I get that knowledge to meet this challenge? So let me put that in white. There we go. And again, 40 seconds on this one. Excellent. I really like that one. Overview of current tech, specific devices, examples. I was in a conversation last night with someone who said, where can you find a good list of apps for young children? We're still asking that question. Okay, let's go on to the black hat. What are the risks and potential downside? And I'm going to give you a minute on this one. Parent flashback, yes. Mm-hmm. Good point. Excellent. Yes. Trying to balance all the time involved, lack of financial support, resistance of staff. Yeah, good point in that media role. Okay, we're gonna go on now to the, let's see here. There we go, to the green hat. And what new approaches can we generate to reduce any risks or overcome any obstacles? And we'll have 40 seconds for that one. I'm going to give a little extra time on this one. I love that patience. Yeah, good point, Elaine. Yeah. Yes, there are grants out there, and don't give up. If it doesn't work, excellent. Okay, so this is the blue hat. How should we think about this challenge? What do we need to learn first to meet the challenge? So a couple of prompts there. Need assessment in the community. Excellent, Summer. That's a good point too. Excellent. And we'll just have a couple more seconds here. All right. Excellent. Now the last hat and the last prompt for us is the red hat. And the question is, what inspires me to solve this challenge? And I'm going to give just a little extra time on this one. What inspires me to solve this challenge? Excellent. Okay, and we'll just let that play out just a little bit there. And don't really have time to report out, but thank you so much for that feedback, and I hope it was helpful.
We will save the chat, and that will be all the responses will be there. Some really great thinking there. So thank you for guiding, Dorothy. That's always fascinating to look at something, all those different angles, put all those different hats on. I know we're getting really tight on time. It's been a really full afternoon. I just want to see if Lisa wants to do any quick reminder of the 3 C's from this morning, so that you still leave with those fresh in your mind today.
Yeah, just real quick, just to remember that these are tools for you, and they can be ways to start a conversation with the families that come into the library or that you're doing outreach for. They don't have to be about having answers. It can be about just helping parents to think a little bit more about what they're looking for their children. So, and I'll pass it back over to you, Carrie.
Thank you, Lisa. And we're going to wrap up with Connie, who's going to talk a little bit about the Media Mentorship Toolkit that was produced out of the Maryland project a few years ago, that really has this book front and center as a part of the toolkit. And I'll let Dorothy share a little bit more, or excuse me, Connie share a little bit more there about that resource.
Sure, yeah. So I'm sharing my screen here. This is really something you can investigate on your own. And I don't want to take up too much of our time this afternoon since it is now 3:30, but you can see here, there's a lot that you can get that we've referenced from today out of here. These are all reproducible. These are all things that you can download and use yourself, change how you need to. So information about how to run the parent discussion groups, how to do a pre and post staff assessment. We have the training slides, many of which you saw today. This is there's some you didn't see, many you saw, slightly different order, but they're in here. You can pull them out, reproduce them however you need, as well as the handouts and activities for the lead coach training that we put together. So really, truly anything that you should need is in here. As Carrie mentioned on that last slide she showed, there is also a book discussion guide in here for becoming a media mentor. So there are questions for each set of chapters that you can run a book discussion. So you can run a book discussion with that. And that's, you know, again, this is something you can go to and explore however you would like. But hopefully this is of use to you and you can bring it back to your library system and help everybody else in your system become media mentors too.
I'd like to just comment and say that if Indiana library staff wanted to form a roundtable about media mentorship, if you attended today and you want to connect more with other library staff in Indiana to discuss this and strategies and things, let me know and we can try and get one set up. And then also a reminder that if you haven't yet, you do need to fill out the attendance sheet for this afternoon also separately from this morning. I've put it in the chat. Carrie, I was going to say, is there anything else we need to?
I will be sending a follow-up email out. Beth and I both will be, with a big sheet of the resources shared today. The evaluation link, which was very important. Please, please, please give us some feedback, and your CE forms, all the goodies that come after a training. But we appreciate so much you spending your day with us this morning, this afternoon. It's always a learning experience for me to be a part of a media mentorship training. I always learn something new. Love to talk about how we can support our families in this way. It is so, so important. So thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your day and week. Beth, anything else?
Just a big thank you to all of our presenters and our panel from this afternoon, because they all know what they're talking about. And it's nice to have experts share with us, people who've been doing this work. So thank you very much. We appreciate their time.
Thank you all. Lisa, Dorothy, Amy, Connie, Teresa, Nigel, I think I had to pop off. Kimberly, thank you all. And everyone have a great day. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.